Hello, Johnny from Eurogamer here, and in case you haven't seen it already, this week Aoife and I got the chance to sit down and play Life is Strange Before the Storm Episode 1 with lead writer Zak Garriss, who is not only lovely, but he also sounds a lot like Adam Jensen from Deus Ex.
I've totally noticed that before. Have I?
Anyway, we spent hours combing through Before the Storm Episode 1, and Zak was kind enough to share some production secrets and hidden extras with us along the way. Most of them were simply too juicy not to share, so without any further ado, here are 11 secrets about Life is Strange Before the Storm we got from the lead writer. Spoilers ahead, obviously, for Episode 1 and Episode 2 of Before the Storm, and just for good measure, there's a pretty big spoiler from Life is Strange Season 1 in there as well. You have been warned.
Tiniest penis in all of us. I think we missed that the first time.
Number 1, Chloe very nearly wrecked David's car. Partway through episode 1, Chloe has to bring a set of car keys out to her mum's new boyfriend David, who, I'm sure you know, she hates with every fibre in her being. As she steps out to find David working on his muscle car, she laments the fact he's moving stuff into the house and working on his motor in the driveway. It's pretty clear from this scene that she wants him gone. The funny thing is, the writing team actually did play with the idea of letting Chloe try and reduce the amount of stuff David has in the house by, well, taking his car and driving it off a cliff. Seriously. We didn't hear much more about the specific circumstances, solely that apparently Chloe was at one point going to be given the option of taking David's car on a little jaunt to a cliff, from which only one of them would be returning. Now, given how uptight David is as a character, I'm guessing having his beloved car destroyed by everyone's favourite teenage delinquent probably would have made him go supernova. Maybe for the best his gaudy car remained in one piece after all, eh? Sorry you didn't actually get to trash his ride, Chloe, but hey, at least you still got to deface his toolbox.
I mean, if
Box
you
of
want
dicks
to,
is really good.
Is that what you did last time?
Yeah.
Let's do it again, because it's
So good.
Next up on our list, Delia the dog, who we're very glad is still with us. One of the most uncomfortable subplots in Before the Storm is the dogfighting ring, seemingly being operated by shady crime boss Damon. Frank is clearly troubled by his proximity to the cruel blood sport, even if, as an offshoot, he manages to acquire his beloved dog Pompidou. If you think that subplot is dark though, to be honest, just be grateful it didn't get any darker, because it very nearly did. Once Chloe wheedles her way into the firewalk gig, she immediately gets confronted by this pit bull called Delia. Now, Delia, you might think, is a pretty weird name for a dog, and that's because, well, to be honest, it is. The thing is, it's also a reference to a Johnny Cash song called Delia's Gone. The opening verse to that song, in fact, goes, Delia, oh Delia, Delia all my life, if I hadn't shot poor Delia, I'd have had her for my wife. Delia's gone, one more round, Delia's gone. So, yep. You guessed it, at one point Delia was going to be involved in a dark subplot in Before the Storm, and she wasn't going to make it out alive. What exactly that subplot was, we're not sure. Zak, after all, was trying his best not to tell us everything, but the good news is that bit got dropped, but Delia got to stay. Good girl. Number 3, the D&D section very nearly didn't make the cut. One of my favourite parts of episode 1, scratch that actually, one of my favourite parts of any episode of Life is Strange ever, is when Chloe sits down with Steph and Mikey to play a bit of tabletop. Guiding either Calamastia, Barb, or the unimaginatively named Chloe through her fight against the evil Durgaron was a genuine delight and a brilliantly faithful recreation of what pen and paper role-playing games can be like, so it's kind of all the more surprising the section was almost cut entirely. Game production, as Zak explained, can be an extremely high-pressure, time-sensitive endeavour, and it's not uncommon for planned extras to be cut from a game in order to ensure the critical path stuff is finished in time and to the required standard. There was a period during the production of Before the Storm Episode 1 when it looked like the D&D section might not be ready and it was in danger of being cut. Thankfully the team, Zak told us, really fought to keep it in the game. Because there was such a limited amount of time to work on this section, Max, that's Max the cinematic artist, not Max the protagonist from Life is Strange Season 1, figured out a bunch of workarounds to make it easier for the animators to keep things feeling dynamic, while also cutting down the production time. Ultimately, the hard work paid off and the tabletop section made it in, which made me very happy indeed. It's hard to imagine a better introduction to Steph and Mikey than that, to be honest. In fact, this section also does some important foreshadowing if you know where to look, leading to number 4, the D&D section does some important foreshadowing if you know where to look.
I cast Warden's Hideaway.
Now, if in the D&D section you fail to kill Durgaron, shame on you by the way, Mikey decides he has to escape and casts a spell called Warden's Hideaway, which summons a spectral door. Zak seemed kind of on the fence about revealing this one, to be honest, but eventually he pointed out that Wardens is an anagram of Andrews, Andrew of course being Mikey's big brother. Fast forward to episode 2 and you'll see why Warden's Hideaway, or Warden's Door, or rather Andrew's Door, holds such significance. Chloe and Mikey of course hide behind Andrew's door as Drew is confronted about the drug money he owes Damon. This, in my opinion, is one of the hardest choices for Chloe to make as she weighs up whether to stay behind Andrew's door, thereby keeping Mikey safe, or whether to go out and get involved, which, of course, leads to Mikey having his arm broken. Add to that the fact the camera lingers on Mikey's D&D miniatures, and it's clear the tabletop section in episode 1 was telling you a whole lot more than how effective Chloe can be at intimidating dragonkin. Now, the 5th thing in this list of delicious secrets is, funnily enough, also from the D&D section. It's almost like pen and paper role-playing games are really multifaceted or something. Anyway, since Chloe, Mikey and Steph are playing a game with a high fantasy setting, it should be no surprise that there are lots of noble-sounding characters and fantastically named spells being bandied about the place. Now, a lot of these, it turns out, are hidden references to Zak's friends. Zael's cataclysmic cone of fire, for example, is a nod to the writer on Civilization 6. Pretty neat, no? That's the end of the D&D facts now, I promise. Now next up, it turns out there's a vandal lurking in Blackwell, and, for once, it isn't Chloe Price. Once Chloe's done defeating Durgaron, or not, depending on your choices, she heads toward the front doors to Blackwell, where she is promptly and delightfully accosted by Rachel Amber and brought into the drama room. Now, during the scene in which Chloe is asked to fetch her belt, you can find a pencil fund started by Steph, who, as it turns out, is extremely annoyed her stationery has been going missing. Mosey on over into the corner of the dressing room behind the screen and pan the camera up, however, and well, what do we have here? It seems there's a tempestuous conflict going on behind the scenes in Blackwell, and Steph is getting the sharp end of it. Well, technically that ceiling tile is getting the sharp end of it, but either way, at least we know now where all the pencils have gone. While we're talking about the Tempest, actually, you can get a little insight into some of the costume design for Blackwell's amateur dramatics production, and it might not be where you think. If you take the time to have a really good look at the totem pole up by the picnic area / viewing your dad kissing somebody he really shouldn't be platform, you'll see that the different sections clearly provide the inspiration for the costumes we eventually see in episode 2's electrifying stage scene, most notably the Raven costume that Chloe's asked to don. Personally, I'm still stumped as to whether the Raven is meant to be Rachel or Chloe or even Chloe's dad, but it's a neat detail nonetheless. Our next point is also to do with the Raven, in fact. You've doubtless noticed that it's taken the place of Max's camera as the loading animation in Before the Storm, but did you know that a bunch of the staff from Deck 9 actually went out and got different frames from that animation tattooed on them? Zak's is on his left arm, if you're wondering. It's a pretty cool fact, especially if somehow you've still needed convincing that the Deck 9 team is committed to making a good Life is Strange game. I think it's pretty clear at this point. They are. Just 2 items left on our list of secrets we got from Zak, and they're both to do with security guard Skip. If you talk to him when you first get to Blackwell, you can get him to confide in you that he's in a band called, rather charmingly, Pisshead. Now, some of you might have spotted this already, but I certainly didn't twig that the name Pisshead is actually pulled straight from the alternate timeline you get to explore in Life is Strange Season 1. If you go on Chloe's computer in that timeline, you see a poster for a gig with a bunch of bands listed. One of those bands, it turns out, is Pisshead. A nice little Easter egg for Season 1 superfans, even if the band name is pretty gross. Now again, if you play your cards right, you can actually hear Skip's demo, and then he'll ask you how it was. Not only does your answer to this question apparently have consequences that carry right through to the end of the game, but interestingly the demo itself was actually recorded by some of the development team. According to Zak, the audio director wrote it, and then he pulled in the gameplay director, cinematics director, and producer to perform it. And that is what you hear in Before the Storm. They're disgustingly talented, in other words. And there you have it, 11 secrets about Life is Strange Before the Storm episode 1 that we got from the lead writer. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much to Zak for all of the info and for sitting down and playing with us. I imagine he must have spent countless hours in front of that game by now, and yet he was still just so much fun to talk to and to play with. Anyway, we've got loads more stuff on Life is Strange on the Eurogamer channel, including a playthrough of all the Before the Storm episodes so far, and we're also making our way back through Life is Strange Season 1, kind of with a different perspective on things now that we've seen more of Rachel Amber and Chloe and just all the goodness that is Arcadia Bay. So check one of those out if you like. They should be on screen now. Again, thank you very, very much for watching. Do like and subscribe because it really helps us out. And yeah, have a really lovely day.